to my YouTube channel. My name is Olawale Adaja, and in this video I'll be showing you how I created this intro for my showreel. And this is not a tutorial, this is more of like my process and more like a commentary on why I did some of the things I did during the course of creating this animation. And yeah, so let's get started. As you can see, the animation is already going, and as you can see, the process is already going on. I'm creating a block out, and at the beginning of this video you will see where I showed the animation, the final animation I created out of this, which is what I'm currently working on in this video. And trying to create a block out as much as possible with what I was thinking, the idea I have in mind. The idea I have in mind was to have a large city with the camera. So what I'm doing here with the camera is trying to create a guide, because I'll be using a square format. I'm creating this guide so that all my details are centered properly and in frame, so that by the time I render it out, I will be able to crop it into two resolutions, which is 1920 by 1080 by 1920, in which I can use for other social media stories like Instagram stories if necessary. So that's how I work. I'm still using simple shapes, to create block outs. Yeah, this is just what I have for now. I'm just trying to look at how things will work out. A lot of things are going to change. This is just the blocker face. Like I said, it's not supposed to be detailed, and the idea changed along the way because of time. I have a time constraint. I wanted to finish everything as fast as possible. Yeah, I was looking at a big city with a tree. Then the idea, if you see what I'm doing right there, I'm creating a curve, a kind of like curve shape, like a flow of the curves in different directions. The idea was initially that particles will come in. As the particles come into the scene, in the building kind of starts either coming from the top or building up. Mostly the first idea was the buildings kind of like building up as the particles is coming in, indicating every of the particles is representing each of the elements in the scene. But then along the line, like I said it before, I had time constraint. I had other things I was working on, and I needed to get this showreel out as early as possible. So I had to scrap that idea and look for a better way. Since it's an intro, I don't want to spend more time on it as much as possible. Doing that particle stuff, it could actually take a longer time for me, and I don't want the intro to take anything higher than 5 seconds even though it's a work on its own. It's a work on its own to showcase my ability and what I can do, but still I don't want it to be that. So I'm trying to create a grid, because what I'm trying to emulate is the viewports. Looking at the Blender viewports, we have the x-axis, the y-axis, and we have the grid. So I'm trying to emulate that to kind of like give the idea of my process and the idea of creating stores in 3D. That's the essence of the intro. So showing people like, okay, this is a 3D person. So there's a story behind the intro, showing that what you can achieve as you enter the 3D viewport and stuff. So that's what I'm trying to create, and I use geometry nodes. One of the ways I tried initially was to use the wireframe modifier. Then I discovered that I don't have much control. Okay, when I say much control, I mean procedurally I need to apply the wireframe modifier before I could actually change the texture of the middle line, which will serve as the x-axis and the y-axis. So I don't want that. I want something that will give me power and ability to adjust anything at any point in time. And also I wanted to animate it, and I wanted to come in form of the curves, the line growing out. That was the idea. I didn't want it to just be something I would just scale out or stuff like that. I had to use geometry nodes, and I had to use a curve so that I can use the trim curve node. All I just did was animate the trim curve node to give me what I wanted, because I don't want the idea. When you enter into Blender or any other 3D software, the grid is continuous. It's not ending. I wanted that kind of feeling, like the lines are growing. It only grows to what you can. It's going to show like it grows out of the camera. That means it still continues growing. It's a large place where you can bring your ideas to life, and that was what I did with the geometry nodes. I'm bringing in the assets that I will be using. Majority of the assets I used here were gotten from Sketchfab. I'll try my best to put the links to each of the assets in the description. If I'm not able to put everything there, you can actually go on Sketchfab and search it. They are all free assets. They are not paid. They are free to use for personal projects. So those are the assets I used. Here I'm working on the road, the main road where the vehicles will be, and I'm also trying to emulate the real life size of a vehicle and placing it on the road, and I see that the road is quite smaller than it cannot even contain 2 cars. I had to adjust the road, the buildings as well. After placing the vehicles in the scene, I had to go ahead to adjust the size of the buildings also, which you will see very soon. That's one of the things. And as I was saying, I was talking about the asset I used. I used various 3D scan assets. One of the things I saw with some of the 3D scan assets I got was that some of them rely heavily on texture than geometry, which is not bad, which is very good for optimization. But for the kind of feel that I'm going for something like a clear render. I want it to be geometry based as much as possible, not texture based. Like the buildings I brought in. If you see this particular building here, it's not going to look good in clear renders, except if I use the texture as the bump map, it might look good. So I had to do away with it. But on the contrary, this other building here was highly detailed. It also had good textures, but the mesh was detailed. Using it for a clear render feel was very good. It's kind of like portraying more details than some of the scanned assets I got. All I'm doing is just arranging my buildings according to the blockout I created earlier. I wasn't going for all these much buildings and stuff like that. I had to settle for just a couple of buildings. Yeah, and I saw that they could actually do the job. Why not? And that was what I actually did. I'm actually always looking through the camera lens, to see that I don't put things that will not be necessary in the scene, things that will be cut out of the camera that you won't even see. So I was very careful about that to limit putting excess stuffs in the scene, unnecessary stuff, so to cut down the time I'll spend working on this. You see me manipulating textures. What I did was remove each of the albedo textures of each of the assets I got, but I left some of the normals, the roughness map and the bump map, so that they can still serve their purpose, but while just removing the albedo from the base color and making the base color white, extremely white. And I also make sure my building were the scale were very correct to the large extent. I use my character to check the scales and stuff like that. I want to create something like a slab, a pavement along the road, the sidewalk and stuff. So all I did was just create a cube, place it in the scene, a very big cube, scale it down to the height of a pavement or a sidewalk. One of the things I did was, to get the pavement to work very well, the first thing I did was to join the roads together and duplicate it and use it as a boolean for the cube I created, but actually that didn't work well. So what I had to do was separate the mesh, use them separately as a boolean for the road, and that worked very well. Yeah, that worked very well. So what I'm trying to do is kind of like create more buildings to fill the scene, and I added a skyscraper. This is one of the assets from Max's free building pack, which I later removed because I didn't want it to be too I didn't want to go too extreme because I have a lot of assets at my disposal, so I had to do away with it and still go as detailed as possible and at the same time as simple as possible. That's the goal. I made sure every of the colors were white, extreme white, to avoid any any differences in what we will be working on. Another thing I did was to add a concrete texture to the slab on the road. I started putting some other props like trees and stuff, and I did the same thing to the trees, to the textures. Remove the albedo, then change the base color to white, leave the normal and stuff like that. That was basically because I want it to be detailed, in terms of the mesh. I want people to be able to see it, even though you might not see it, but I just like it like that, the details and stuff. So yeah, I'm just duplicating the trees, rotating them, scaling them to not look exactly as the main tree that I used. That was basically what I did. To not look exactly as the same tree, that was basically what I did. I also brought in street props, which I got from Sketchfab also, because I don't want to, start modeling all these things one after the other. It's an intro. It's not a full project that I want to work on. I had to use assets, work on it, just place them. I had to bring everything. This is a very poor way to bring things here. One of the ways I will usually do this is, open another blend file where I will import these assets and just copy them and bring them here, or take them to where they are not in the scene like this, then pick them one after the other and bring them in. But time constraint, I had to go ahead to bring them into the scene and start placing them where I know they will be seen in the camera. Unfortunately, some of these assets were not seen in the camera, especially the ones that were close to the camera, because before the scene got built up, the camera was already moving, and so it had to cut them out. Nevertheless, as much as I don't want to put things that will not be seen in the camera, it still happened. So yeah, that's one of the things. I'm just editing some of the props to fit into where I'm placing them. Yeah, basically in the next few minutes, what I will be doing is just placing the props, using my initiative to think, okay, this should be here, this should be there. Let's put this there. I've also gathered some reference I used New York City as an example. Yes, you still see me opening the images just to look at it. So that was majorly what I did with this particular project, just placing the assets where I know they will function well. I don't know, I feel this is too fast. If you like to see a slower version of this, I have a slower version. I have a version that is 1 hour 21 minutes long. I have a version that is 2 hours. I think I have a version that is around 5 hours or so. So it depends on what you like, but I just felt like I was going to drop a time lapse initially, but I felt like without the commentary, it would just seems like any other time lapse on the internet, and that will not be fair if you want someone to actually, get one or two things from what you actually did, your decision and stuff. So that's why I'm trying this out with commentary. Hopefully in the nearest future, I'll be dropping tutorials. I have a couple of videos of work that I have done previously that I have not even edited. I'm hoping that I will have the time to edit those videos and convert them to a time lapse and use them as commentary, or even use them as tutorials, so we can actually discuss more on why and how some things were done, so which is the basis of what I'm doing here. Yes, I'm just placing things in the scene based on the references I have with me and what I'm seeing and what I believe the camera will see. And I was not overdoing this. I made sure I avoided overdoing it to some extent, so that it will not be as if because I have the assets and I'm just doing everything, putting everything anywhere. That's basically it. Another thing I want to say is I grouped a lot of these assets, create a collection for each segment. I have stripped prop 1, prop 2, prop 3. I have trees, I wasn't always like that. I started doing it until you want to go back to your project and it's messy, you don't know where this is, you don't know what this is. I started cultivating that habit, and that was how we got to where we are. So now I want to use geometry nodes to animate this my grid line. What I did was, first I had to create the materials for each one of them and assign the material using the set material node, which I did. Then I will be imputing the the values I will need to animate them to the group input. If you are not familiar with geometry nodes, you might not understand some of the things I'm saying, but this is just a basic stuff with geometry nodes. So I'm just going to be putting the values that I will be needing, that I will be animating. That's what I majorly did here. And one of the things that I did was, the selection is still a single geometry node, but I had to select the middle part where separately, and which is the y-axis and the x-axis, so that I will be able to assign a material to them separately aside the main grids and stuff. So if you are interested in the geometry node, you can just mention in the comment section. I will find a way to actually probably share a link to where the image is or something like that, and you can work on it. But it's just something simple. If you are keen on learning geometry nodes, one of the people I would recommend is Erindale on YouTube. Yeah, he knows his stuff. Yeah, it will get you started with geometry nodes, and he has a couple of tutorials that will really help you, and he also has a course. So yeah, most times I go back to his tutorials to see some of the things. And another person is Cartesian Caramel. Yes, he also has some good tutorials on geometry nodes. So what I'm doing here is just animating my elements. Here I'm attaching the buildings to an empty. So what I will be doing is animating the empty instead of the buildings themselves, because they have several parts, and that will make things a lot easier. So just assigning them, parenting them to an empty, which I will use to animate the buildings later on. I literally parented almost everything, even the props, street props 1, props 2, props 3, parented them to their separate empty. And what I did was just animate them, overlap the animations in such a way that it will be interesting to the eyes to see. That's what I basically did, and it was quite good. Even the trees, I assigned them to an empty. The only thing that I didn't assign to an empty is the road. This 3D scan building at the center, I didn't say police station or something like that. I did, because it's just one, so I didn't need to animate it to that. Another thing I did here was using the delta transform to animate this stuff, because I like animating from like 0 to a figure that I can put to a whole number. And because my empty already has this kind of decimal figures, decimal points and stuff, I don't really like that. So I prefer to start from 0 to a point that I can work with. So I'm just animating the empty here. That's what I did basically. I'm timing them in such a way that when every action is creating another reaction. That's the theory I'm using here. Every of the action is creating a reaction. So when this one is going up, another one is also being initiated. They are overlapping each other, and that's the basis of the animation that I used here. Another thing is I brought in the cars from Sketchfab. I got the cars from Sketchfab. I discovered that they were not parented to the body, so I started parenting the body to the other parts of the vehicle so that it will be easier for me to move around. I did this for all the vehicles before assigning them to an empty. Then I will just select the body and position the vehicles to wherever I want them to be. That's basically what I did all through, just positioning them strategically especially taking note of how they will look in the camera and stuff like that. So that was basically what I was doing to the vehicles, and later on I rented them to an MT of their own, which I also animated the data transform, on the z-axis for it to come down from a sky. And yeah, that's basically what I did for that. So that was the idea. I was basically editing the animations, tweaking it over and over again to match each other, to kind of like give a pleasing animation. Yeah, so I also discovered that majority of the vehicles didn't come with their textures. I tried to relink the missing project file or project assets, project data. You can find that under file, under external data. You can always relink your project file, but it didn't work. It worked for some, so I had to bring the texture in again, then adjust them. Then also did the same thing, remove the base color, change the base color to white, remove the albedo, change the base color to white, and I left other textures there. I want to create this wireframe to clear render kind of animation. Initially I was using geometry nodes to do this, but then I found an add-on, Blueprint Shader. It's not really an add-on, it's more of like a plugin, or let me say preset, whereby you just append the material. It has a blend file. You just append the material to your scene, and you can apply the material to your mesh. Sorry about that. You can apply the material to your mesh. So all I did was apply the material to all my mesh. So now you'll be thinking like everything I've been doing with all those my mesh, removing the albedo, base color, everything has just been removed, because this actually has its own color. Yet it has its own principled BSDF, and it's different. There are some cases that I had to bring in all the textures back, like the roughness, the roughness, the bump map, the normal map, and all other ones, excluding the albedo. And there are cases like that I did that, but there are some cases that I just overlooked that and just went ahead with what I have. Yeah, that was really tasking. Another thing, I'm trying to work on the materials for the grid, and I kind of like felt the grid should be an emission shader instead of, the XY should be an emission shader, while others should be something like a grayish color, the other grids. And I also made sure the grid lines has different colors. The big grids were lighter than the small grids, but you wouldn't see that much except when light is kind of like reflecting on them. The majority of this side here, I'm just tweaking the textures, tweaking the grid line, the blueprint grid line textures, and then I am also tweaking the animation. Most especially, I want to work on the animation so that I can get out a kind of a play blast, so that I can see how the animation runs. To get your play blast, what you do is you change your render properties from cycles or EV to workbench, and you render it out like in form of animation. Most times I render my play blast out at 50% or 20% if the scene is very big and I know that it's going to tell on my PC. So if the scene is not too big, like this one, the scene is not too large, so all I did was 50%. There are times that you won't even have significant difference from rendering the play blast as 100%, full scale, and 50%. So I did 50%, so it's being rendered at 960 by 960, and which was pretty fast. I think the whole renders just took like maybe 1 minute or 2 minutes or thereabout. So yeah, after checking it out, I come back, tweak the animation and work on it to fine-tune them, especially when they were overlapping. When they were overlapping, I had to bring them, I had to work on it. And also I created a text in the same scene. So the font I used was Impact. I like the Impact because it was bold. That's this regular font style, but I really like it. Why? Because I feel like it resonates with the scene, the buildings, and I need something that is blocky, something that is bold to signify concrete and stuff like that. So that was what I did. The animation of each text was quite interesting because what I did was I converted the text to a mesh, then separated each of the letters into separate objects. Then what I did was, while they were still in alignment, I added a keyframe. Then I went to object. While they are being selected, I went to object. Under transform, I picked random transform. That was what did all the magic. So I just gave them a value, the random transform. So they were just scattered around, rotated around. Even the scale, I tampered with the scale. Then I added a keyframe. Although later on I tweaked some because some were not working, but that actually made the work even faster. And that was very good. That was a very good way to work on something as fast as possible. So there were a lot of stuff coming into the camera earlier than I wanted it to come into the camera, and I just kept on tweaking it, working with the graph editor and also the timeline editor, and I was just tweaking them till I wanted it to be playful in some way. I tried it, but I'm very time conscious. While I'm being time conscious, I'm also very keen on doing the best work that I can come out of it. So I try to weigh my options, like if this comes out this way, does it reduce the quality of what I have done, or does it still work? So if it still works, it does not reduce any quality of what I have done, then yes, I go ahead with it. But if it actually does reduce the quality of what I have done, I kind of like find a balance between that. So that was the case of this. And if I made all the text dramatic, extra dramatic, it will take time because I will have to tweak each individual text and their values and stuff. You see what I was doing to the H there. The H was coming in a stylish manner. That was what I was talking about. I just look at it like, is it worth it to do something like that? Is it not cool without having stuff like that? And moreover, this is an intro. It has to be something that people will not get bored before they watch the other works in my showreel. So those are some of the things that were considered, that were taken note of. I'm trying to talk about some of the decisions I'm making. I want to be sure I'm touching a lot of things, but definitely I know I will miss a couple of stuff. So if you have any questions regarding any of my decisions or why I did stuff, why don't I do it in a manner, and if you have a suggestion, you can also go ahead and suggest those in the comment section. So yeah, the lighting for the text was a separate lighting. I had to light it with two planes in such a way that I created a plane that is facing the middle of the showreel text to kind of like highlight that the middle point to make it lighter and creating a kind of fall off to the side. So that will give you an illusion of the text curved, like it's bulging out in the middle, then curved by the side, which actually is a straight text, That's one of the things I actually did with the text. And also if you are working with a text, if you are working with a text or an animation and you want it to look like the element in the scene is a bit bent, having this kind of curvature along the right and the left side, what I did was I used 24 focal lengths for my camera. That's for the camera. Yeah, that is going to create that kind of illusion. It actually worked for this scene, which I am pretty happy with. So another thing that I did was, I'm trying to kind of like look for a balance between the clay render and the wireframe. I want the wireframe to be obvious, at the same time I want the clay render to be obvious. So one of the things I did was create a plane in the middle to block the light coming from the clay render scene to the wireframe scene, but it didn't turn out well. It was too dark, the wireframe scene was too dark, and it was not looking like they were part of the same scene. So I had to just go ahead and remove the plane. One thing I didn't mention is that I was using just a single sun for the scene, then I used a spotlight for the background. The background is like a plane that has these mechanical lines on it. It comes with the add-on. So I said add-on, plugin or preset. It comes with it when you bring the entire collection into your scene. It comes with it. So that was what I used. I just changed the colors, tweaked it a bit as a background to give it a kind of feeling like it's a blueprint and it's being created virtually or stuff like that. So that was, I just felt like it's cool, and it will add a form of depth into it. So yeah, so that's one of the things that I did. I animated the sun. If you look at the video very well, when the grid line was coming up, the grid line is being illuminated by the X and Y axis and a point light, the point light that I said I used for the background. So I animated the sunlight that it comes up gradually as the pavement is being scaled in. So it just comes up gradually till it comes to its full intensity. So that was what I did basically for the lighting. Lighting is pretty simple. It's just majorly the sun, the point light, and that's all. So the blueprint shader is just a bunch of coupled together different shaders mixed together. Yeah, it was pretty brilliant. It saves time rather than using a wireframe or going to turn every of my mesh to curves and using a curve profile on them in geometry nodes. That will have taken ages. So this is faster. If you can get it, I will put the link to the creators add-on in the comment section. So yeah, I think that basically sums up everything I've done, and at the end of this video you will see the intro, the showreel intro. If you are keen on seeing the showreel, you will see the showreel I will put a link to the Vimeo, or yes, I will certainly upload the showreel on YouTube also, so you can go to my video section to see the showreel. That would be great. And yeah, if you have any question, you can drop them in the comment section. Thank you very much. Goodbye till another time.